I'm Dan, and this is 10,000 Hours of Indie, a podcast exploring new music and delving deeper into what goes on in the background of the independent music industry. I'm a musician and music lover and enjoy nothing more than discovering a band I haven't heard. In this first series of more in-depth interviews, I speak to 9 acts from a vast array of musical backgrounds about what it means to be an independent artist. From recording to stage, we talk about their musical processes and the decisions that have shaped them. These interviews are fascinating, and I have certainly learned something from every single one of them. Follow on the socials and email me 10,000indie@gmail.com. Hi there, Tamar. How are things going?
Things are going great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, Tamar is an American singer-songwriter guitarist who has been in a couple of bands since beginning her musical journey in the 90s. Oh, that's a long time ago.
More than a couple bands, let's just say.
She's now happily a solo artist and now with a full band, and her last album had some impressive reviews and a solid amount of airplay in the US. She is planning to release her 5th solo studio album later this year, and I have to say I'm excited to hear which direction this album takes, as each of the previous releases has taken a different perspective and mood. Tamar has self-released all of her music since going solo. So, for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit more about your musical background and fill in the gaps I have left?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I guess, my life in a nutshell, I grew up being forced, I suppose. A lot of parents force their kids in some ways to take piano lessons. As early as 5, we were on Sundays going to our piano teacher. So my first experience with music, aside from listening to a lot of musicals and classical music in the house, was taking piano lessons and starting with classical music. And then at night, my parents, we had a little turntable, and my mom and dad would buy us Disney albums, and we're talking classic Disney, the original Snow White, the original Jungle Book, the original Cinderella, the good stuff, the beautiful vocal arrangements and lush harmonies and catchy melodies, like beyond catchy. So if you were to ask me if my early influences would be classical music and classic Disney, and, the throwing in of different albums growing up with interesting stories. Like I would have these vinyls of the Grimm's fairy tales and things like that too. So at night I would also often listen to like Danny Kaye narrating these Grimm's fairy tales, like the Little Matchbook Girl. And so my mind was constantly like hearing things and making meaning and dreaming. And as I grew up, I was a very overactive child. And so they put me in gymnastics. And then after gymnastics, I was like, wanted to be in ballet. And ballet was something I pursued until I was 18. So I became a classical ballerina. So there again, the classical and contemporary classical musical background. And during all those years, I was also listening to radio and indie artists like Suzanne Vega and Edie Brickell and Liz Phair, like all of these musicians that were coming in, these female musicians that were coming out that were doing really cool things. And I bought my first guitar. And when I purchased my first acoustic guitar, I also bought a chord book. It's very in line with my brand, if you want to call it a brand, but like just teaching myself, like I don't need to take a lesson. I'm just going to figure it out. And so, within going to college and being a ballerina, I was like playing songs on my guitar. And I think because of the classical and Disney background, hooky melodies and rhymes came very easy for me, in a sense where like I was constantly hearing and making up rhymes and melodies in my head. It was very easy for me. It was very natural. It wasn't a struggle in any way. I could take a sentence and put it together in a catchy melodic way. And I found that very interesting. Now, as I graduated college, and went to Chicago and was my mind was blown by like the rock and roll scene, particularly like Liz Phair and Smashing Pumpkins and Urge Overkill and all these bands in the Chicago music scene. When I decided to move there, and I was like, I want to be in a band. I was writing my cute little Edie Brickell-esque, Suzanne Vega-esque songs on my guitar, but they were in line with what my influences were at the time, and my influences were changing. And I was really influenced by Liz Phair's first album, Exile in Guyville, and she was just, her lyrics were so moving to me, and I was really going through a lot of that at the time. She was singing very much like me, she wasn't trying to be a singer per se. She was singing in her own voice. It felt very honest. It felt very real. And I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And so aside from, the 3 jobs I had just to make ends meet, the waitressing, the coffee shop, the whatever, I was pursuing buying a little 4-track machine and an electric guitar and starting to write songs. I had no idea how to start a band, but I started recording. Before anything else, I taught myself, again, very in line with me, teaching myself how to use a 4-track player. But like many who couldn't afford one at the time, what we did is we had a boombox and a tape. And so what you would do is you would record something on the tape itself, right? And then you'd have another tape recorder that played it back, and you had another tape recorder with a new tape in it, and you would be basically doing what a 4-track player did, but you would do it on your own with actual tape decks, and just you would continue layering in this bizarre way. And you thought you were like, oh, this is so cool, I can do all kinds of weird things. And it felt very inventive and very personal, and like hours and hours on my days off, never even leaving my apartment, just like trying to make songs. And eventually when I could afford a real 4-track, my mind was just like, oh my God. And then figuring out how to make 4-track into 8-track with still a 4-track player. It was just like a time of pure creativity that had no bounds. And I also did not filter myself or judge myself. I think ignorance was bliss for me at the time. I didn't really care if anybody liked it. In fact, I didn't think anybody would, really. So I started my first band called Starball. And when I found the first members of Starball, it was actually my boyfriend at the time and his friend. And it was a 3-piece in which I played guitar and he played guitar. And it was 2 guitars and a bass player. Eventually that evolved into many different members over the year. And eventually my songwriting got better and it got more poppy, I would say. It was more weird at first, like more mathy and aggressive, in line with like PJ Harvey 4-track demo type stuff and whole Babes in Toyland kind of things. And then eventually it turned more poppy because, again, that Disney vibe never leaves me. And also the members at the time, I started becoming influenced by them. They were feeling more into the poppy stuff. And, when you're in a band, you want the people that you're playing with to like what you're writing, which, isn't the case now because I'm a solo artist. But I did make some compromises, and that's okay because you want your people to be stoked about the songs. And unfortunately, that meant some songs went away and never came back. And yet, because I recorded everything by myself, I have hundreds of hours of songs that, in fact, I had pulled out later for my solo career. So that's the beautiful thing there. Maybe the band never played them, but some of them that always stayed with me, I eventually released. And so I was in Starball, then I was in the Countdown, and then I was guesting in a bunch of different bands in Chicago. And then we eventually moved to Portland. And in Portland, there was sort of similar to your like decision, Daniel, about like wanting to shake things up. Now, again, I was moving to a new city and had to start over. And it was very depressing. I was well known in Chicago and in a circle, let's say. And when I went to Portland, I was a complete unknown. I hate using that term because that's that Bob Dylan movie, but I was literally, nobody knew me. I literally put a Craigslist ad in to just join a band and play organ and keyboards. And from there, that sort of evolved into a decision I made to just be in bands, not be the front. And so I was probably in almost 12 bands in my 10 years in Portland. All of them, I was not the main person, but all the while was still writing in my studio and collecting my own songs. And maybe subconsciously, and not even subconsciously, I said one day I'll put a solo album, but it was one of those like one day. It takes a lot of guts, as many people know, to put an album out with your name. So I never really thought I would have the security to do that. So Portland years were great fun. A lot of bands, a lot of learning how to learn songs quickly on the organ, became much better at piano and became much better at producing my own stuff. Worked with some amazing producers when I was in Paradise. We worked with Ron Nevison, who was an engineer on Physical Graffiti and even Quadrophenia. He worked with The Who, and we found him living in the state of Washington. And he helped us work on my rock opera that I wrote with my husband. So that was wild times. Then when we moved to San Diego, again, I had to start over, and it was heartbreaking. And I just was like ready to give up for real. But I said, okay, well, what was the last thing I really wanted to do? Well, put a solo album out. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just find some musicians to learn some of the favorite songs that I've collected over the year. But we're talking like hundreds of songs. So I had to like pick my top 5 that I always wanted to release. And so I found some guys in town through a project that I had guested on keyboards on. And we started rehearsing them. And the plan was to actually get a studio and actually record them. And then COVID hit. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane. I was just like, okay, well, maybe I just record them all myself. I could fake every other instrument and I could fake programming drums, but that's not the vibe that I am, you know? And a friend of mine who've worked on all my solo albums, Matt Thompson from Ivy League Recordings, said, well, don't you know some drummers that like are off tour right now and have their studio? And I'm like, well, I do know Matt Walker, who is playing with Morrissey right now. He's played with Garbage, he's played with Morrissey, he's played with Smashing Pumpkins and Filter. So maybe he's available, and thus became the sort of partner in crime for my solo. Because once you have a drummer, you, as a person who could generally play everything, I wouldn't call myself a bass player, but I can play bass and I know what I want to hear, so I can play it. And I'm not a lead guitar player, but for the first album, I actually played some of the leads and had the guy that was playing with me in the studio before COVID hit also had Pro Tools set up in his home. So he was willing to like do that during COVID. So I had kind of a little bit of a band, but all remote. Well, it was 2020 where I recorded The Restless Dreams of Youth and released that in 2021. And that was my first solo album. And then since that time, I said, this is a good formula for me because I want to make the music that I want to make. I don't want to compromise. I don't want a band necessarily that tells me what they like and don't like. Now, when we play live, I want them to choose the songs they like, although there's some that I say we're playing that. But that's different. I've already recorded all the songs that I want to record. So now I kind of do the same thing. Matt's been my drummer for all 4 of these records and this 5th one. I did expand my lead guitar playing group. They live all over the place, Chicago, Portland, Nashville, like all over. I have several bass players that I use, 2 in Portland, 1 in Chicago, and my husband plays bass. And I play most of the keyboards and all of the synths and stuff, but I did find some cello players, some viola players, some trumpet players. And so I've expanded, definitely. And I've gotten better at producing, better at engineering, better at preparing my sessions for mixing. I am not a mixer, but even my rough mixes are sounding really good now, into a place where like, wow, I'm getting really good at this, you know? But I know my lane. I know where my lane stops, and I am not a mixer. There's an art to that I cannot get to. So there's the story.
That's a very big nutshell.
I know. I'm sorry. Was I start?
I completely agree with you. Once you find the drummer, it's so much easier because, like you, I can play a little bit of everything. Jack of all trades, master of none, I would say.
I feel like I'm a master of the art of songwriting. I mean, not all my songs are good. But I know how to do that probably the best out of even my, my guitar playing and my piano playing. Like, it's just something that the hooks in my head never stop, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So the first actual question, as that wasn't really a question,
I know.
what do you listen to and what are your influences? And are they the same thing?
No, they are not the same thing. In preparing for an album, I often listen to a variety of things for inspiration. I always listen to the Beatles because they'll always tell me, oh, that's what he did with that keyboard on that song. And then I'll try something in the similar, because they are the book of how to fill the space of music with beautiful and perfect ideas. And so I definitely use the Beatles. But then there's a lot of newer artists like Lana Del Rey that I'll listen to the vocal production on. Billie Eilish sometimes Chappell Roan, like how she builds her hooks, the production of those songs. I sometimes listen to Jack Antonoff and how he produces vocal chains and how he mixes vocals for Sabrina Carpenter's last album. I will listen to modern stuff. And I'll always go back to the Beatles for ideas for how to build a song, or ELO, or sometimes it's Elliott Smith's. There's a kind of handful of people that I listen to during the creation of my producing of the songs. And that can include some bands I'd never heard of before. So sometimes I'll just put a playlist on that says, like, a Spotify indie rock, indie pop playlist, and be like, okay, this is what Spotify is choosing. What is it about the song? And sometimes I'll hear a cool synth and I'm like, oh, I love that synth, and I love synth playing. So I'll throw in a synth, because I do want to be current, but I don't want to be current. That's not me. But what I listen to on my own is very mood related. A lot of times it's Lana Del Rey, and a lot of times it's the Beatles, and a lot of times it's Elliott Smith. Like, I do fall back on that stuff, but my go-to in the car is 70s rock pop radio stations on Sirius. Those songs are my go-to. I don't know what it is. I know all the words of almost all the songs, and I love the production. And it's just kind of a vibe for me.
Is that maybe the same as me with 60s music? Because that's what I grew up with my parents listening to. Maybe it's that sort of hug you need from the music you grew up with in a way.
Yeah, there's a lot of memories of me and my dad. My dad died in 2021. And my dad was the guy who picked me up from gymnastics, drove me home from gymnastics, picked me up from ballet, drove me home from ballet. And, there was no Sirius XM there. But what you did play was this mishmash of, 70s, 80s tunes on the radio. You listened to the radio back in the day. There was nothing else, unless unless you bought the vinyl. So it is a warm hug. It's like a warm hug. It's nostalgic. And quite incredible productions. And as a person who's now in the digital world, my mind is just blown by the quality of playing and rehearsing that the bands had to have done to get in the studio and create this. And the producers who are editing this, if there was editing, tape editing, because it's unbelievable. Today you're like, oh, that's really bad. Well, I'll just fix it with with a plugin, or, oh, I got to auto-tune that or something. We all do that these days. There's no doubt. But back in the day, it was like, you take it until it sounds good.
I think there's something to be said for that method. And I think that's why bands from that period probably lasted a lot longer than bands do these days, because it's almost too easy in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. And similarly, other than playing live, it's been years since I've recorded with a band that I've also rehearsed with. The last album that I recorded with a band and rehearsed with was 2017, and that was the rock opera. And we practiced and prepared for that. And when we recorded, we sounded great because Ron expected that, because that was his world, It was a wild experience, very cool experience.
So where do you look for new music? Is it a conscious thing or do you just stumble across it? You did mention that you still listen to the radio now. And do you still get a thrill when you hear something you really like, sort of hairs on the back of your neck standing up sort of thing when you find something?
Okay, so I'm a lyric person, very much so. But I think because I also produce my music, the hairs on the back of my head or the back of my neck or whatever you say will stand up when I hear a production that is a mood instantly, like a vibe instantly. Because when I'm writing now, I am less concerned with the lyrics because I know that that comes for me. I'm a big feeler of things and melody, but I want to be better at creating the sounds and the soundscape and the vibe. And when I hear something new, let's say like you said, on a Spotify playlist, if I go like new indie rock women, let's just say Spotify indie rock women, I will be like, oh, that is so cool. Less about the artist and about the lyric and more about like the vibe, the tempo, the instrumentation, which has changed over the years for me.
Can you remember the last thing that made that happen?
Well, of course, Lana Del Rey. But if you want to get more obscure, boy, I can't remember the name of the band, but I was very moved by the tones of it. And it was like, I Don't Want You to Die is the name of the song. Let me just see.
Uh-huh.
It's called Thala. Her name is Thala, or Thala. I heard the song and I was like, wow, that's a really cool 90s, because I'm a 90s girl. So I was like, well, this is such a throwback. So I'm relating to it, but it's also very modern sounding. And I just stopped and was like, I love that.
So have you always been aware of independent music and wanted that to be the way you released your music?
I would say that I've always been independent because nobody's ever signed me. And even when I wanted to get signed. So when I first started out, my dream label was Matador and I wanted everything in the world. I would still die to be signed to Matador. It's the record label with, I feel, the best taste in music and also like well run and all of that stuff. So that's still a dream of mine. I've never been signed. And so in my mind, it was just always, I'm just putting this out. I never thought of myself as I'm just putting it out, just releasing it, So there wasn't always a term indie artist. There was indie rock back in the day, but now it's like indie artist and there's a million indie artists now. It's like a million, bajillion. We were just talking about the number that gets uploaded to Spotify each day is in the thousands, in the tens of 20,000s. It's insane. So I am in a group of basically, I hate saying it like this, but we are just the cogs, the money-making cogs for all of these independent distribution companies. We're just a numbers game for them. They don't really care about us as artists at all. They just care about the numbers game and what we pay to put our music up online through their services. And that's a little disheartening, I would say. A lot of them have better services than others. But when I really feel like a quote unquote indie artist it's that I have no control. The only control I have is how I present myself online. If I want to get a PR person to help me, my choices in that way, making my videos, making my photos, making my songs, but we lack control in the distribution world. We cannot control that. And not that independent musicians that are on indie labels can, but there's more control in the sense that you have somebody fighting for you because they have a stake in it too. They want to make money too. So they want to push for you to do well. But, I'm against all of those people, those Ariana Grandes of the world, as well as the Matador level people trying to vie for Spotify playlists and all that stuff. That's when you really feel small. And I think for me, the only thing that keeps me going are my basic fan base. And it's not huge, but it's like they buy all my stuff. And then every time I put a new record out, I get more fans and more fans. So over the 4 years of putting these 4 albums out, it's just expanded exponentially. And that's the only way you could go. If you think about it, you will just not do it. The odds are impossible. They're impossible odds. So you just can't even think about it. You just must do it for yourself. And music for me is therapy. So I would never stop.
Okay. You've answered all of my questions in that section without me even.
I know. I do that. I do. I just go off. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. What is the difference in your creative process now that you're a solo artist compared to when you were creating music in bands?
Much different. Every time I would write a song for the band, when I was embedded into the Starball world, I had to always think about if they were going to like it. And I think that's a pressure that probably the sole songwriter, there are many bands where there's one sole songwriter. Oftentimes they go off on their own and they do solo careers and still have their band. But like take, for instance, Brandon Flowers from The Killers, so he has his band, The Killers, and he has Brandon Flowers' solo project, right? I love them both. And in fact, his solo stuff could be killer songs. And I do wonder why they weren't. Maybe he just didn't want to edit himself. Maybe he didn't want to have to answer to the band not liking something or changing his vision. Oftentimes it's not like you want to dictate what people play when you bring a song to the band, because you have to allow them to explore the song and do their own thing on it. Otherwise, it's just a dictatorship. And some bands do work like that, and I have worked like that before. And some of the band members are fine with it. Just tell me what to play. Give them the demo and they'd be like, just tell me what to play. And I like that. Great. And then other times I'm like, here's the basic idea, but you should go off on this, do your own thing. It's fine. But when I'm writing, I will know exactly what I want it to be. And if I don't, then I will hire somebody and give them a reference of what I want and say, this is what I want. And we might go back and forth. But it's the self-editing with a band. For some reason, you feel this need that you want the band to approve of the song, which makes sense. It's logical. But when it's your name, it's not a band anymore. And I don't think people should approach it that way. I think people should look at it like, if this is your name, Daniel, if this is your band, Daniel, then I'm playing Daniel's songs and Daniel should tell me what to do. And if he says, go off on this one, do whatever you want to do. And then, I love that. That sounds great. And if somebody has an opinion, like, I really think this sounds good here. I usually say, well, let me live with it because I'm not sure. I need to live with it. At the end of the day, my name, my song, if that's what I'm going for. If it's a band, it's different. It should be different. Even if the sole songwriter, there should be some sort of understanding and agreement. Like, hey, I did write all the parts on this song, guys. Are you okay with hearing that? And if they're like, well, I'll base it on that, but let me try something, which should be discussed.
I started a band at the beginning of last year, of which all the members except the guitarist changed pretty quickly. I have learnt to write for that band now.
Exactly.
When I first started, I went, right, here's sort of 15 songs I've written that are for a band. And we kept about 5 of them. And now I'm writing for the band, taking an idea, which, I've written all the lyrics and I've got the chords and the sort of vocal part nearly there. And then I let them roam. So it's exactly what you say. It is a completely different songwriting process.
It is, because you're also thinking about this person's skill level.
Yeah.
And back in the day, when you're thinking about playing these songs live, you have to think about that. Like, oh, will this harmony be okay for this member? Will this bass line be too hard for them? Will they be into this drumming part? It's funny. I used to be like stressed about presenting a song to them. I'd play the 4-track demo and like make sure it sounded great and play it through the speakers because their opinion mattered. And I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore, to be honest. I'm too old for that. Like, I have a vision and I just want it to be that. And that's another reason why I haven't pursued managers or labels in that sense, because I really don't want anybody telling me what to do unless it matches with and is a good idea for my vision. Like, if it builds upon what I'm already doing, not changing it, not trying to make me somebody else, then I will listen. But like, I don't need somebody telling me like, oh, well, to be competitive, you're in this market with this kind of artist. I'm
Yeah,
like,
you need to sound more like that sort of thing.
oh, I've heard that so many times in my life. I mean, Daniel, I have to tell you, there was literally a time where I'm playing like 90s Riot Girl loud shit like Hole, and went to South by Southwest, and some stupid manager came up to me and said like, because this was the 2000s, and they were like, well, would you be into like singing other people's songs and learning how to dance? Because Britney Spears was like number one.
Wow.
And I was like, did you just say that to me?
Jesus.
Like, this is how fucking stupid some of these people are. Unbelievable, because it's only money for many of these record labels. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the industry is still in a state of turmoil. That began when Spotify started, and that's more than 15 years now, and they still haven't got their head around what the hell they need to do. So the industry is now run by independent artists who, like yourself, who know what they're doing and know what they want, because that's the only kind of people I'm interested in listening to, certainly.
Yeah, there is a lot to be said about that. We do have more control in a weird way than we ever have. And yet, I do feel like there's payola behind the scenes with Spotify that is so beyond what we can even understand. And even Apple Music, like the big ones, you know, where they're going to still limit who's being played and who's being pushed and all of that stuff. I know the advertisement. There are ways that independent musicians can advertise on Spotify, and I have tried those services before. So if you wanted to talk about that whole side of things, it's very interesting. They're not cheap, though. I tried a few to see what would happen.
I think the artists that enjoy their music and still do it for the love of it have done it organically and found their audience, like yourself.
Yes.
Throwing money at something you dream of doing is not the way to do it.
No. First of all, you need to be your biggest fan. You need to want to listen to your own music. And I'm always amazed when people expect to get people to listen. I am so thankful when people take a second to like look at an Instagram post of mine. And I thank each and every one of them for hearting it or making a comment, because there's so much out there being thrown at all of us at all the time, that the fact that this person just took a second of his life after being thrown a billion things in his face from his phone and his computer and his Netflix and his streaming, it should be appreciated. I've been told that before, and I really appreciate when somebody recognizes that. They're like, you respond so quickly to emails, you respond to messages, you respond to DMs so quickly. It's really nice because it shows you care, you know? And I do not take it for granted when somebody buys a CD or an album or likes a post, because that is literally everything today. I'm not touring the world. I don't have money to do that, you know? So for me, my interactions online is everything, as exhausting as it can be sometimes. And I'm learning how to be better at my posts. I'm still not great at them, but I'm learning about posting and reading a lot more about how to be more effective and times of day and what to put in posts. You know, it's constantly changing.
On the same theme, you've had quite an emotional roller coaster at times during the writing of your solo stuff. I know, for example, one of your albums, I think it was your third album, which we were talking about last time, that you were still writing then, was dealing with the loss of your dad. How much has this affected the albums you've made? Obviously, that third album was specifically about losing your dad, but how much are your songs and your songwriting about emotional moments that happen?
So the second album,
was
the one where it was really the most about him. But the third and fourth, and even this one, there are always mentions of him and songs about him. It has helped. The second album, I felt like I was in a daze, because what happened is he died in 2021 during the writing of that album. And some of the lyrics were already, that I had started even before he died, were very much in line with like thinking about death and thinking about my legacy and stuff like that. And then when he died, like the shift turned into much more like real. that was a very hard album to finish and very sad. And but I'm very proud of that album because I never lost hope in it throughout the making of it. When I look back at that time, I think I was in a bit of a daze, and similarly to you, Daniel, I had a bit of a breakdown and when he died and quit my job, my teaching job. So I was focused so much on that and just daily crying, and it just was just tough. And then and that was called Start at the End. That was the name of that album, and it was released in 2022. And then Tiny Injuries, which was released in 2023, still has songs about him always. But that's when I was like reflecting and trying to figure out, I guess, my next move or my next thing, and kind of looking back at my life. Because when somebody dies in your family that like is your rock, you start to like look at all of your relationships and all of the things that have happened to you in your life. The only way I can describe it is like the very DNA of your makeup changes. Something changes in you when the person that you love the most in the world dies. And I was not the same person. And it also makes you just look back at all of the relationships in your life, all of the traumatic or hard experiences that you've had. And that's what Tiny Injuries was about. There's some songs directly about him in that too. And then Good Times for a Change, which was released in 2024, last September. And that's the one that's out now. The latest one that's out now is like, of course, my little nod to Morrissey, who I love, or the Smiths, who I love, with the title Good Times for a Change. With that double meaning, good times for a change and good times for a change, is me in sort of this weird in between. Like, where am I? Like, am I ready to change? Am I not ready to change? Am I just existentially existing right now? And that's what a lot of those songs are. My father is in everything I do from the minute he died. And he's going to be in this new album too. And he shows up actually twice. I mentioned dad and father in the new album, but not in a way that is maudlin. I don't like doing it that way. Because mourning is not always about somebody dying. And I think we mourn things all the time. We mourn the loss of childhood. We mourn the loss of relationships. We mourn the loss of jobs. We mourn the loss of houses, of friendships, of ourselves, our younger selves, of objects that we've lost. It's like life is a series of quietly mourning things as we get older. That sounds really depressing. I'm not meaning it to be, but it's
no, I know what you mean.
But then new things come into place to replace those. So I think that when I talk about my dad, I'm not going to be maudlin about it, because anybody can relate to the idea of mourning and losing things. And a lot of people tell me that. And they email me and message me like, this has really helped me get through some rough times. And I love that. That is everything to a songwriter.
I mean, I know I find myself, I can write a lot more when life's a bit shit and something bad's happened. Do you think that could be a reason why you've been so prolific over the last few years? Because there's been so much going on. You've had this outpouring of emotion to put into your songs.
Really, really good observation. Yes. The time in Portland in which I just wrote and recorded the songs, but was basically in just a bunch of different bands. The songs that I did write were nice little poppy things. I suppose I was happier in a lot of ways. My child was younger. The world was simpler. There was no COVID. There was no George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement. So many things has changed the world, the new administration here in the US,
We're not going into that.
We're not going to go into that. But what I'm saying is like the change in politics and the use of TikTok has changed people's how they react to each other. Instagram And online living, it was not what it was. It happened very quickly. But I guess what I'm saying is a lot people seemed a little bit happier overall, including myself, and living more outside and in real life and in the moment. And my kid was growing up, loving life in Portland and being in lots of bands and had a good job. And so, but the songs that I wrote were contemplative and thoughtful, and some of them showed up on The Restless Dreams of Youth, because that's still a theme of mine, nostalgia, always a theme of mine. But to answer your question, yes, I have no therapist. I don't go to a therapist. I don't believe in therapy. I think therapy today is kind of a joke, to be honest with you. Any Joe Schmo can become a therapist, and I think they're very dangerous unless you are dealing with serious childhood trauma. And then you need to go to a specialist. It's not somebody who goes to a therapist and says, my childhood was traumatic because my mom yelled at me all the time. My mom yelled at me all the time too. I mean, we're not talking about that. People overuse the word trauma so much these days, it just kills me. And for me, music is the way that I reveal myself to myself and find these truths that come out subconsciously in a way that I could never. And I'm not going to tell a stranger my life story. You don't know me. You'll never know me. And I know my behavior. I know exactly why I do the things I do. I know exactly why I'm annoying at times. I know exactly why I say the things that I do. I know exactly what my motivations are. I know exactly why I was in the right sometimes. I know exactly why I was in the wrong sometimes. A person just needs to be reflective of their behavior, willing to admit they're wrong, and hoping to become a better person. And if that's your goal, you need just a creative outlet and you'll get through it. And a good partner. Songwriting for me cannot be replaced by a partner or therapy or anything. If I don't do it, it feels like you cut my arm off. I don't know how else to explain it. For some people, it's writing. For some people, it's painting. For some people, it's being in nature. Everybody should have something that is uniquely theirs that lets them feel creative and in touch with their soul and the universe. It's getting very esoteric here, but I've had a lot to write about because I'm not healed yet. But the thing is, Daniel, I will never be healed by the death of my father because it has changed the way that I look at literally being alive. So from this point forward, I'm just wondering many things about existence. So I have a lot of these questions, which I didn't think about before. You know, of course you think about death, but until the reality of somebody being there where you touch them and you give them a hug and then just not existing is enough to freak a person out as to like, what is the point of all this? I think creativity and art is humanity's point of all of this, I suppose.
I lost a very dear friend at the end of last year, and he was far too young. And
I'm so sorry.
I wasn't ready for it because I was off last year. I wasn't working, and I had chosen, to take a new path, and I was exploring my options. I got to spend a lot of time with him, and we had about 18 months where we knew he had cancer and it was terminal and everything. And so I saw him a lot more than most of his friends during that time. And I was still sort of in denial that we were actually that close. But the amount of emotions I felt and the amount of songs I've had to get out of my system since then, I completely understand what you're saying.
Yes, because it's so confusing. And it's also like it just shakes the core of who you are when you're in a room with this body, with this soul, and then they're simply gone. They're simply gone. And all you have is the memories and these pictures and the clichéness of even that, all I have is the memories and the picture. The cliche of that sentence is the truth, though. Like, you don't have anything else of that person but what is in your head and a two-dimensional picture. And it is beyond understanding for me. And I don't think I'll ever understand why God, if you believe in God or the natural course of events, makes us feel this way. And I believe animals feel this too. I believe all creatures, God's creatures. I'm not a religious person, don't get me wrong. When I say God, I believe in Mother Nature. So that's kind of my God. But all of nature's creatures feel loss, and it is just awful. And so I don't think you'll ever stop writing songs about it either, because it'll show up in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different feelings, because you have a sense of like abandonment as well, but it's not abandonment on purpose. It's just an abandonment of feeling like this person just left me.
Yeah.
And I think you spending time with your friend, the thing about time with somebody is the most important thing, because that just being in the presence of people is how you really get to know them. And in so many ways, which is the irony of how we live today. We're not in the presence of people as much as we used to.
There's an irony to that statement for me, in the fact that I love talking to people and yet I hate being around people. I can't make sense of that myself, but that's a whole other issue which I'll deal with some other time.
Yeah, I think that is a whole other issue. We can get into that.
So let's move on. Self-releasing. As we discussed earlier, as I mentioned earlier, you've self-released all of your solo material. What is the most rewarding part for you of self-releasing?
Just the fans, because the most rewarding part is seeing my sales on Bandcamp, seeing people buying my album and making, like I said it before, they took a second to listen to a track, to click on buy. And I will never take that for granted, because that is a person who is inviting my music in a physical and digital way into their lives. And it is a privilege. And I know that sounds really heavy, but in today's world, there is so much stimulation, so many options, that when somebody does that, and I know who they are because I see their email address and where they live, and I can email them and say, thank you. That is the most meaningful part. Is if I was with a label, if I was with a management, I don't know that I would have that connection with the people. I mean, you can, but it would take a lot more runaround, because if you have, like, let's say, a label that is handling your Bandcamp page and you don't know who's spying this stuff, you can't connect with your fans the same way. You can't send an email directly from you. It has to go through your PR company or whatever, So that's the thing I love the most. Or when people comment on my Instagram post and I know exactly who it is because I know the album they bought, it's a very personal thing for me. And I think that's the biggest joy. And also, of course, being creative on my own timeline, on my own ideas, saying yes and no to what I like and don't like. And I have to be honest, as much as I bitch and complain about it, because I have obsessive compulsive issues. And in the making of an album, it is extremely hard for me. It takes a toll that maybe not many can relate to, but it's a toll that it overtakes my life from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. So some people are like that. Some people are not. It's not a hobby for me. It is a linear process that becomes a very obsessive compulsive thing, that things need to be ticked off in a certain way, and I need to get them done in a certain way, and I think about them in a certain way, and it overtakes my life. And when it's done, it feels like an immense release, and just like then it's out in the world and it's no longer mine, it's the world's. And that is a really wonderful feeling, to give away control. Then it's like whatever happens, happens.
That's why I've never made an album yet. It's coming though. Is it challenging to find the time to effectively do the job of a label while making your music? And what are the challenges of doing both?
Money. I mean, regardless, it's an illusion, even if you have a record label, because the money that they give you is not even real. It's just upfront. Although I look at the credit card as my record label. The credit card is my freaking record label. I use it as my upfront, and I pay it when I can. And when I sell a certain chunk of albums, some of it comes back. I will never break even. But I usually break even on the production of the vinyl. I will never break even on the mixing, the mastering, and my hours, and paying the musicians that I pay to play on my stuff. But I will generally have broken even on selling the vinyl. But I have never made any money. So money. I think that's the thing. But again, like I said, it's an illusion anyway. If you get a record deal, And the worst part about that is that you don't see the paperwork. So when you have a record label, they keep all these records. Oh, well, you still have to pay the upfront costs and you still have to pay, this big chunk that we gave you. You have no way of knowing unless you demand with a lawyer to see what's actually come in and how they're like deducting, like, is my number going down? You have no way of knowing. Unless you demand to see it. You have to put full trust in your record label that they're taking money off of what's coming in towards your money that you borrowed at first, because it is borrowed. It's not given. And I think that's a really feeling of freedom. I can see exactly what I'm spending, which is hard, but I can also see exactly what's coming in and how I can pay it back. I'll know what I will be able to pay back, whether that's meaning I got to sell a keyboard or I have to play a show that's, $40 so I can pay for, whatever, but at least I see clearly. Whereas on a label, there's this mystery. There's this like man behind the curtain thing, like Wizard of Oz, where you really do not know how the money is being, unless you have the most amazing manager and the most amazing lawyer that is demanding to see, and you have a deal where they have to show you monthly or weekly or however, like you would need that. Because I can't even imagine these small indie bands that have these record labels who never even see the paperwork.
Social media and fan connection is the next topic. How do you find the constant pressure of having to create social media output? Is it something you find challenging as a promotional tool? And do you think artists do enough, or have there been times that you wish you had somebody to help you with it?
I never want somebody to help me with it. I wish I had more time to do it. You know what I really wish? I wish I had just a room, a small little closet room that was already set up with the lights and everything to just walk in and do a post. I would have a mixing board and everything that I need. Like, I think one of the things that's hard for me is like, I jump back and forth from producing my songs to rehearsal. And then, I need to make a post. So there's like this element that is like this 3-part life that I have, like my social media life, which I must do and must take seriously, and it must look good, and it takes a lot of time. And I think most people would realize, like, if you're doing a good post on social media that looks good and sounds good, maybe has a text element to it, has a cool filter on it, that could take 2 hours of your day. And I am not exaggerating, with the right keywords and just putting it up at the right time of day. So I would love to have just like a little social media room, like just get a bunch of lights, have it all set up and go in there, maybe play something live, or maybe just have some makeup on and do a little, lip sync to my own song, whatever I decide to do that day. It's not technically my brand though. My brand is kind of like off the cuff. I am like, I'm just in my studio mixing, I'm going to do a post. My brand is a little wishy-washy, and I do need to work on what I'm conveying on my social media, because I think that's important to think about how you convey yourself. Would I like to talk to somebody about my brand? I mean, the person I need to figure that out with is me. I think my brand is just real, and sometimes it's behind the scenes, sometimes it's goofy. I would suppose if I had a social media person and in a label, they would try to narrow down my brand. And I will say I will say this very quickly. I have seen and followed people who have become signed from TikTok and loved them on TikTok because they started their own thing, and then they get signed, and then I hate their posts and how they look after they get signed, and I stop following them.
I've discovered a lot of bands and artists on TikTok since I joined, which I think we're both too old for that, aren't we? But
no, I don't think so. But I think the pressure of posting, I used to feel that I needed to post every day, but I don't need to post every day. I just need to post smart things. So I'm getting smarter about posting and trying to be more interesting. Like do something live with me, just acoustic, and then do something for my rehearsal, and then do something in the studio, and then do something, kind of break it up so there's different avenues that I convey of myself. I don't want it to be all the same thing, even though some channels work better that way.
I was going to say about you actually, because I know that in terms of connecting with your audience, you've always been particularly good at email communication, long before artists were really using it, when it used to just be very generic emails from record labels and things. Just a few years ago, you were already sending out emails saying, hey, this is what I've been up to, this is what I'm doing, this is what's coming. And that sort of stems back to you knowing who your true fans are. They're the people who've signed up for your email list and things like that. Have you recognised that that's essential to your brand, as it were?
Well, what I like about it is with Bandcamp, you can see all the people that bought your album and they have to put an email address. They don't have to sign up for your mailing list. But when they do purchase something, there's an email address. And I don't email a lot, but when I have something important to say, I have collected those emails and I will send them. And that's different than sending it through Bandcamp mail, because these also include the people that have bought my album. So therefore, I have people that have made an effort to purchase my music, which means there's on some level interested in what I'm doing. Now, whether or not all those email addresses get through, believe me, the bounce back can be insane and can be very tough when you have to be organized about your email list. But I do like that. Oftentimes, my fans are people that have been around before Instagram and they have the same email. They have a Yahoo or a Hotmail. And I'm not kidding, they respond because they like email. And a lot of people are in their 60s and 70s that still buy vinyl. And then of course, I have the 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and usually those are DMs on Instagram or what have you, and they need not respond via email. But some do. And, I like it. I like it. It's just another avenue because not everybody sees what's in your feed. Not everybody even follows you on Instagram. They might follow you on Facebook, but not Instagram. And maybe you post more on Instagram. A lot of people are off of Twitter now and they think Blue Sky's the way to go. I went to Blue Sky. I don't know. It seems like just another kind of confusing place to be.
I'm on Blue Sky.
Yeah, it seems confusing. I haven't really explored it and I don't.
It's what Twitter was 10 years ago before it went all Trumpian.
Wow. Yes, I should explore that more, and I might, as I have more things to start pushing this year.
I struggle to keep up with the social media. The problem is, especially with things like TikTok, you start liking all the music and then you suddenly realise you're following 500 people and you're never going to see them again.
Yes.
So oversaturation. It's what you were saying before about, there's so much being thrown at you that you don't know where to start. So when somebody appreciates you for what you're doing, it is a great feeling.
Yep. I know.
So, live shows, you don't play that much live these days, but as a performer, What are the differences between playing a live show solo and with a band? I mean, obviously you've got your own band now, that's a little bit different, but now that you have your solo band as opposed to when you were in bands, and which do you prefer?
Well, the thing with the solo band is that the songs have been recorded, and they're recorded exactly the way I want them to be recorded. So what happens when we play live is we discuss them and and now there's so much layering in my songs that we have to pick and choose what works for the guitar player to play and the bass player to play and the drummer to play, because it's never going to sound like the recording. So we have to decide how to make it work with a 4-piece and make it sound great. And a lot of times it's more rock and roll, to be honest with you, less produced and more fun and more rock and roll. And I enjoy it quite a bit.
Which is how a live show should be.
Exactly. We're not going to have any keyboards, which is a huge part of my albums, keyboards and synths. But I don't have a keyboard player and I don't have a synth player. And I'm not that interested in complicating my live show right now. So that's where we are with that. And when it was the band, it was just a lot of negotiating. And I think I'm too old and less patient about negotiating. I don't need to. This is my stuff. I don't feel like I need to apologize for it. I don't need to negotiate that. This is how the song was written. If somebody wants to, I will 100% be like, if the guitar player's like, hey, can I try it this way? I'm like, yeah, let's try it. And I'm like, you're right. That is so much better. That's different than negotiating. That's like, let's try. I try every suggestion. I try everything. So that's different than me having to give up something that I want. But we always try things. If somebody's like, oh, can I try it this way? Or maybe it would work better if you played it this way. I'll be like, let me try it. Always try. Generally speaking, when I use the word negotiating, it's like, I will not negotiate the set list if I want to play the set list. I will not negotiate the way I sing. I don't need somebody to tell me how to sing. Like, I know when I sound bad. I know when a song is challenging for me. I don't like somebody to tell me that doesn't sound good with my voice. No, thank you. A singer already has their own insecurities with their voice, and they need to feel good about it.
I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I certainly don't want to negotiate with changing the structure of a song that I recorded and like. That's not to say we may not, we've extended instrumental parts for live because it just is cool, but I'm not going to cut something. No, that's not going to work. If I say I want to cut this last verse, or I think we should extend this and make it a double course for this live show, that's different. I'm making that call. If somebody comes up with a suggestion, great. But I found with a band situation, there was just so much negotiating. Like, you shouldn't do that.
You're at the stage where you just want to get on with it now, not fanny about with all the stuff in the background anymore.
Yes. The goal is what makes the song good. And I think when you're younger, you're more emotional about stuff and you take things so much more personally. And today it's serving the song. This is my goal. Serving the song. I don't care about your ego. Don't care about my ego. I will work on my own insecurities myself. It is serving the song. How is this song going to sound the best? And if that means that guitar part is busy and is playing over the melody, then let's tweak it. If that means I'd rather hear this harmony than this bass line, let's do it,
You've got a show coming up in September.
And I do have something coming up, a few smaller things, but the big one is September in Chicago. It's my yearly back. It will be probably my record release party for this 5th album. It's September 27th, 2025.
Is it a conscious decision that you don't play that many gigs anymore?
I think when I'm writing an album, I'm not that interested in playing out. Because like I said, with my brain the way it is, it's very hard for me to shift gears into a live thinking. Now, as the album comes closer to getting mixed, I have to start thinking about getting my name in people's minds again, and things are happening and getting rolling and playing whatever little things I can do and getting my name out there and getting pictures and getting people to see me because something's happening, something's going to happen. And so that becomes more of an issue. Playing live is something I'm enjoying more and more. I've never been a huge fan of it because of ballet, I think. I think I have a lot of hangups. I think about being in front of people and people being critical. So I carry that with me. But when I have a good group of guys around me and they're just just have fun, just fuck it. We've practiced so much. Let's just fucking go. Let's just go, and then I start to just take a deep breath and just have fun. Because at the end of the day, because I'm a person who enjoys rehearsal, really loves rehearsal and really would over rehearse if possible, my preparation is such that when I go, it should be by rote at this point. Everything should be by rote. I should be it should be all in my body. It should be all muscle memory. I should just have fun. And I'm getting better at that. But there's still those shows where for some odd reason, my heart will not stop beating and I feel a panic attack coming on. And then I just have to talk to somebody in the band, get my mind off of things and just get reassured.
I used to have appalling, really, really bad stage fright. And I got past that by being in a covers band, which was something I never wanted to do.
The cover band really helped when I was in several of those in Portland, because the pressure is not on you.
I don't know, because as the singer, I do have to know the words.
That's true.
The invention of tablets was the greatest thing ever, because you can have your words in front of you. But
So true.
That actually gave me the confidence to do a small solo tour, which
Oh, wow.
scared the absolute crap out of me.
Wow.
But I played in this small city in the north of Finland. It was about half full. There were about 60, 70 people there. I wasn't the headliner. I was the support for somebody who I was touring with at the time and booking for. And people came up to me afterwards and said, I really connected with your lyrics. And I was like, holy shit, people still listen to lyrics.
I know. People do. People do. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't until that stage that I actually realised I'm actually playing a solo show with my own songs.
Yeah.
It had sort of become the natural progression of having fronted a covers band for a few years and got my confidence on stage that I'd just stood on stage on my own, playing guitar very badly and putting my feelings across in words. And I was like, shit, I've done this,
Yeah. It's amazing.
I think I know how you're going to answer this one, but which do you prefer, recording or playing live?
Recording.
Yeah,
100%.
okay.
Yeah.
That's a simple one. More general questions. What are your thoughts on the instant fame machine? I mean, things like X Factor and Idols and things like that.
The television ones.
Yeah. And maybe talent contests in general. I don't know.
I think they're great because a lot of people that have come out of those have done great things and have been artists and have worked really hard to get to where they are. I have no problem with that. Let's put it this way. If somebody won, let's say, American Idol, it will shake out where it needs to shake out for them. In other words, Kelly Clarkson was a star from the beginning, and she has just continued to be a star because she always was, and this is all she wanted to do. Whereas other people, other contestants who've maybe won, it'll shake out. They'll fall by the wayside because they really didn't have it in them to begin with. So in those instances, I think those are good tools, and they're great tools for somebody who has the opportunity. I think it would be nothing I would ever want to do. And that's why I admire them, because they are wanting to skip a bunch of steps and get in front of millions of people, which I would never be able to emotionally handle, like at all. I would never be able to just suddenly be in front of a million people. And especially the way people are on social media and how mean people are on social media, I think I would just go move and live in a cave after that. Like I can't, the hate a simple, stranger who stands up there in front of the judges and sings could get just for simply singing a song in front of a million people. The amount of hate for no good reason, is awful. But as a tool, historically, it can do really good things for somebody.
You are the only person that's answered that question positively, which I like.
Oh, okay. Yay.
Everybody else is very much focused on what's happened to the people who failed and people like Liam Payne and things like that. So it's interesting. Liam Payne was the guy in One Direction who fell out the window in the Mexican hotel.
Yeah. But that's what I meant when I said, if they're built for this, their path will go that way. If they are not built for this, their path won't. And it will do harm. You've got to know what you're getting yourself into. But for those like the Kelly Clarksons, the Brendan Benson of the world, know what they're getting into. They're built for it. You need to know thyself. Know thyself.
There's an American artist who I went to see with my son back in February when we went back to the UK, and I had no idea he had been on the British X Factor. And he's very Freddie Mercury-esque in his
Brendan
singing
Benson.
style. No. A guy called Spencer Sutherland.
Oh, okay.
He's well worth checking out because he's got the perfect stage persona for his music, which is very dramatic and he's a brilliant singer. But I had no idea beforehand that the reason he was the way he was is his background in sort of musical theatre and all this kind of thing. Because I had seen him on TikTok and thought, this guy seems cool. Oh, he's got a gig when I'm in England. And then I looked into his background afterwards, because sometimes it's better to look into people after you've seen them or heard them.
100%. 100%. I mean, back in the day, we were fed stars by the record labels anyway. We were fed that. We had no choice. I like all the avenues given to people And if a star is a star, they'll be a star. And those avenues will give them an opportunity. Like the Melanie Martinez on The Voice did not win The Voice, but she has a massive career now.
Often the people who don't win are the ones that are actually more successful, because the ones who do
because
win get called out with a major label and get pushed down the avenue that we were talking about earlier.
Yes, exactly. I know.
Okay. So what's the best advice you can give to a young person who wants to start a band right now?
I don't know if I'm the best person to ask that, but I would say the things that I see on TikTok that are doing well are really good songs. It will never get old, is a good frickin' song. And then producing it the way that is going to convey it the best. That's it. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you look like today. I mean, obviously you'll get hate if you're this or that because people are just pieces of shit, online. But I have seen not very attractive people singing with the most beautiful voice, the most beautiful song. And I'm mesmerized and notice hundreds and thousands of followers because the song, the production, the voice touches people. And my only advice is the song, and just keep writing. Because if you don't keep writing, you will be a one-hit wonder. You might get that TikTok viral video and then you'll have nothing to fall back on. So for instance, I always think of that girl who had that B, C, D, E, fuck you and your mom and your sister. And you remember that song?
I do.
You can't even remember it. It was everywhere. It was all over TikTok. She was on Jimmy Kimmel. She was on all the night shows. She was, she had that one hit and there was all these rumors that she was like an industry plant. Who the hell knows? I don't really care about that. But that song was great. Have you even heard of her? Gail. She had nothing else in her arsenal. Nothing. There's nothing else that she's done. I haven't heard from her.
But was that even written by her?
No, yeah, she wrote it. Yeah, that's what I read. She wrote it. But I think what they were saying is there was an industry. I think how the rumor is that she wrote the song and then maybe somebody in the industry said, how about we pretend I give you a prompt called A, B, C, D, E, F, like you just sing a song. And that was the theory that the industry plant just said, yeah, write a song A, B, C, D. And then she already had the song though. But anyway, that's a perfect example. That was everywhere. And I don't think she had any other songs. And so my only advice to like new songwriters or who want to become famous, don't do it quickly. If you don't have songs to back up your thing, people will forget about you in a second if you don't have another song, if you don't have something going on. Chappell Roan has been doing this for a long, long time, and her album has a ton of hits on it. So just because it's new for you, hot to go, she had other songs to back her up and a whole series of albums. So she was ready to go. When she was ready to go viral, she had what to back it up with. And I think that you have to be really careful today with that because everybody wants to go viral with TikTok, but then what? And I ask myself that too. I think I was talking to somebody who was like, you need to go viral on TikTok. And it's like, honestly, I don't know if I want to go viral on TikTok. Like I'd be good with 10,000 people liking my song and hearing my song, but I don't know if I want 1 million. Like, I don't think I'm there. I don't want that. Yes, I have the songs to back me up, but I don't want to be known on that level. Like, scares me a little bit, actually. Don't know what comes from that. And it just could be so ugly. Like, who in the hell knows, Do
you believe that independent music is in a good place at the moment?
Yes.
I think you probably do, judging from what we've talked about.
I think it's a great place. I wish these distribution companies weren't such fucking thieves and trying to screw every independent artist. From Lander, CD Baby, DistroKid, Tuner, Song Trader, all of those have positives and negatives, but at the end of the day, they are just sucking any freaking penny they can from the independent artist because it's a numbers game for them. They don't care about you as an artist. It's just how many people can we get through our distribution company, so that 0.001 of the penny times thousands of artists, hundreds of thousands of artists is what we're going for here. That's what kills me. If there was really a distribution company that was truly cared.
I think the only one is Bandcamp, isn't it?
It doesn't have distribution.
No, but to a certain degree, in terms of having the digital music available, it is, I guess.
Yes, but it doesn't have distribution. And distribution is what I mean when I say Apple Music, Spotify, all of the places that stream that people listen to me, Pandora, Amazon, YouTube. You have to have your music on that stuff. And if Bandcamp started a digital distribution company, which I would guarantee they're in talks with, I can see it in my head that they're thinking that's the next thing, because they already have radio. They already have like Bandcamp radio. I mean, it's just like any other internet radio, but I can see that would be amazing. And that would be a big threat. Now, for people who are independent, you really need to do your research. There are some places that you pay a flat fee to just put your music up there, but then they take 20% of your royalties. There's places that you pay a subscription yearly, and then you get 100% of your royalties. But then there's a lot of fine print. You got to be really careful.
I'd just like to say the downside of Bandcamp, which I had in the back of my mind, I couldn't remember who it was. Bandcamp were bought by Epic Games in 2022. So Bandcamp is no longer as independent as it once was either.
Yeah. I think that's when people were nervous about what was going to happen with it. Yeah.
A more general question, which most people have struggled to answer. Do you think it's easier for an artist based in the UK or US? Take you, for example. Do you think it would be easier for you if you were in the UK or Germany or somewhere like that?
I mean, this could be a really naive answer, but part of me thinks yes, because it's smaller. And going from LA to New York is 3,000 miles. And that just stops an independent artist from touring instantly to the East Coast. Even when I think about it, and even me going to Chicago, which is almost that far, I need to fly my band out there and rent gear and find a place to run the set. And people do, obviously, they rent vans here and they go, but like, am I going to drive across country from LA to New York? That'd be a year of my life stopping and touring. Who can do that? Whereas with UK, it feels like you can get around to a lot of places in a relatively short amount of time and play some major markets. Here, you would think of it more in terms of regions. So like you could tour the region of the West Coast here, and then go back to your job and make some money. And you can tour the region of the South, then go back and make some money. Like you could do it, but part of me thinks that it would be more expensive. Also, in the UK, it also feels like, because it's smaller, if something's hot in London, most of the smaller markets will hear about it. It feels like again, that could be a very naive part, but here, it's just a massive market. There's East Coast artists and West Coast artists. And unless you're like huge and getting huge, you don't really reach that worldwide, that US market, unless you get signed by a major label.
Interesting to have your view, because I spoke to a Canadian band who have played quite a lot in Canada, but haven't really made it across the border to the US yet, despite being quite close to a couple of US cities. But I think most artists I've spoken to in Europe have been, really don't know what's going on in the American music scene, although touring's probably challenging. So you've confirmed that.
It's just because it's so darn big,
Yeah. I guess it's the same if you're in somewhere like Australia, where there's 5 cities you play, but they're a flight away to each of them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much the interview done. Thank you.
Wonderful. You bet.
What are you currently up to? I know you're constantly working on recording and things, but let people know what you're coming up with before the end of the year.
In May, I'm mixing my album and completing videos, press photos, and all of these things that I need to prepare for the release. I think this first single is probably going to be in August, early August. And then the album is going to be released in early September. So that is the biggest thing, is album 5. I have the title, still working on the artwork. And that's what I need to get through right now in my head, is getting this album mixed. Mixing takes a lot out of me emotionally, because I need to hand my year of work over to somebody. And it's not easy for me. Some people, they can't wait. For me, I am so involved in my sessions. I live with my sessions. Today, just before our call, I was preparing a session to send to him so he can prepare it for mixing. And looking at all the tracks and cleaning up all the tracks, and I'm like in them. So handing it over is very, very big. But Sean O'Keefe, who mixes my records and mixed all 4 of my solo albums, and will be mixing this one, I trust so much. He's also extremely patient. I don't trust many people. That every time I listen back to my albums, they all sound so good. And they're exactly what I want, and any of the things that I would tweak or probably are my fault. Like, oh, I wish I would have added a vocal here or, something like that. Nothing that he's done at all. So I'm looking forward to it because I can check things off my list. So that's that. And then the Chicago show in September, and then whatever happens in between, and just selling this album and getting it out there and making some videos. It's always fun. I love making videos.
What are the lead times like on getting vinyl pressed in the US? Because over here, since COVID, it's been insane. You've got to wait up to 10 months for a record to be pressed.
It depends where you go. I keep hearing up to 10 weeks.
Okay, well, that's not too bad at all.
But that's also like smaller runs, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. Again, that's a place that farms it out to the Czech Republic. So it's still coming from... Still coming from Europe, so I don't know.
In this country, the Czech Republic's the place to get your vinyl pressed as cheaply as it's possible. Okay, how can people find out more about you, your socials and website and things?
My Linktree has everything, but I do have a website, tamarberkmusic.com, but I'm at Tamar Berk Music on Instagram, Tamar Berk Music on Facebook. I have a Twitter. I have Blue Sky, as we were just discussing. I have Threads. I have, what else do I have? I'm on Spotify. I'm on Apple. I'm all the streaming services. And of course, my Bandcamp. So if you search Tamar, Tamar, last name Berk, and Google, I will pop up with all of my music videos and all of that stuff. And you can find me on YouTube too. And just keep in touch, take a chance, listen to my stuff.
I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't already.
Thank you.
So,
yay.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure as always.
It really was. Thank you, Daniel, for reaching out.
And good luck with the release. I will certainly be one of the first to listen. And if you send me a promo, I'll listen even quicker.
Oh, you know that I will.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.